Today, there's so many halachas on Yom Tov, not Chol Hamoed, on Yom Tov. One of the halachas, if you're allowed to do measuring on Yom Tov, it could be a shaila, maybe measuring for food, or maybe measuring on Yom Tov like Pesach, the matzah, to know the shiur of matzah, or to measuring the shiur of the wine. Or for some people, they need to measure their medicine. There's some powder medicine people take, they need to measure it. So are you allowed to do measuring on Yom Tov a lot? So the Tur brings in Siman Tov Kuf Dalet, Osur Limdoid Tavlin, you're not allowed to measure spices, K'delitnom B'Kedeira, in order to put them in a food, V'lenachtom Mutar. If it's somebody does commercially, whether it's a nachtom, it's a baker, for that reason it would be, let's say somebody makes food in a commercial setting. Today is very practical. You're going to hotels, many people are going to hotels, so it's more commercially. When you make for so many people food or bread, so you don't want to spoil the food, so they allow you, Chachamim, on Yom Tov, according to the Tur, an individual not allowed to do it at home. If it's done for more bigger setting, if it's a yeshiva, if it's a hotel, they do for people, boifan hamutar, Rav here, they cook boifan hamutar, so they're allowed to measure the spices. That's what the Tur says. Now, so according to this, an individual should not, an individual should not do any measuring. The Shulchan Aruch says exactly the opposite of the Tur. Mutar odom limdo tavlin liten begedeira b'shush le'agiach tafshilo. He doesn't bring anything about nachtam, nothing about commercial setting. An individual allowed to measure. If you want to know, I need to take 1 ounce of some spices. If I'm not going to put it right, I'm going to ruin the whole.
This is for Pesach?
Any Yom Tov.
Why can't? Oh, on Yom Tov.
On Yom Tov, I said before, it's Hilchas Yom Tov now. I'm not longer Chol Hamoed. I just mentioned Pesach. You want to measure. Let's say you want to take minimum matzah. Some people don't eat gluten the whole year. Come Pesach, they do it for the mitzvah. He doesn't want to take more than he needs to. So you want to measure your matzah. Obviously, we're talking about a scale that's not digital, it's mechanical. No other isurim involved in this. We're talking about that the only problem is measuring. Chachamim asad measuring on Shabbos, Yom Tov, B'ofen and Kloli, because it looks with Darcha Achol, Mekach Umemkar. The whole Mekach Umemkar is also with Rabbanon. The measuring is part of the isurim of the Rabbanon. There's no isur the rise of measuring. It's with Rabbanon. It looks like you're doing schoira, you're doing business. The whole thing of business you're not allowed to do. It's not one of the Lamates Malachas. It's with Rabbanon. Akoponim over here on Yom Tov it says the Shulchan Aruch says you're allowed to. Tur says not to. So where are they coming from? So the Emes says it's a Gemara. It's a Gemara in Maseches Be Daf Chof Tes. I'm not going to go to the whole thing. I'm not going to do what's negea to us. It says over here, Lo yimdot odom soirim v'itan lifnei behemtoi. You're not allowed to measure, to give the animal, you want to give the man, let's say you got used to give it, let's say 1 pound. Talk about the regular Yom Tov now. Soirim, Pesach would be a different food. So you're not allowed to measure before you give it to the animal. Give it approximately. Aval koider ukava kabayim v'nesam v'nei behemto. You could take be'erech, more a little bit less. That you could do. Then it says, v'anachtom moida the tavlin, the nachtom, again, the Pashas HaGemara, like the Tur. Nachtom talking about is a baker. Or for that reason would be a commercial cook. Yeah, like I said, in a yeshiva, in a hotel, yeah. V'anachtom moida tavlin v'nesam v'nei behemto lo yagdiach tafshiloi. So, should not ruin it, yeah. So L'choira is mashma, from the Gemara mashma clear, like the Tur understood. And many Rishonim understand like the Tur, the Nachtam is dafka, the heter was just for somebody doing commercially, he's allowed to measure, and an individual not allowed to. That's how the Tur paskin. However, the Shulchan Aruch and the Tur, the Besois of the Bach, and many other understood that Nachtam is lav dafka. Anybody doing food is allowed to do it. So the Maisa comes out like this. So everybody maskim with all the poskim achron looks like the maskim the Shulchan Aruch, that even an individual is allowed to measure spices. You have a measuring cup or measuring spoon. You're allowed to measure, to put in the food, even an individual. So the chayre, it's no problem. You can measure on Yom Tov. Comes the Magen Avram, turns the whole thing back again, going back according to the Torah. But for a different reason. The Magen Avram says, V'yesh omrim, the dafka lenachtam shore, v'locha nireli, since there is such a yesh omrim, which is the Torah and many other Rishonim, the idno, the av b'choil lokchim b'oimad hadas, is not coming to saying that the people understood like the Bach, the Shulchan Aruch, and all the other Rishonim understood that you're allowed to do it, even the lav dafka, the Gemara said nachtam, commercial. Anybody could do it. It's not mitzad. Since there's such a yesh omrim, he says, and since also another reason, since today, the aida av b'choil lokchim b'oimad hadas, most cooks at home, most balabostas or balabos, they don't take a measuring spoon when they put the salt, when they put spices, they eyeball it. They see, they put approximately. So it says, since we do it anyway, every day, why punkt Yom Tov you want to become a yekah and do it exactly by the measurement? He said. That's why the Magen Avram goes back, he says, also limded b'Yom Tov. He passed on Lamaisa, you cannot do it on Yom Tov. So going back to the original halacha, nachtam, allowed to.
What if someone always measures?
Oh, very good. Very good. We're going to get to it. So according to the Magen Avram, now many follow the psak of Magen Avram, the Mishnah Brura, the Alter Rebbe, the Aruch HaShulchan. They say, since you would do it all the time by measuring, by Oimad Hadas, should be Osur. So the Lamaisa, the bottom line, after all of this discussion, different opinions, Lamaisa measuring on Yom Tov is not allowed. Oh. So now you're asking, what happens if I measure? So the emphasis is the Mishnah Brura and the Alter Rebbe says if there are places that you measure, he says you would be allowed to measure if there's a place that you measure, and that's how all bring it. Aruch HaShulchan, the Alter Rebbe, the Mishnah Brura. If there's a place that you measure, so you're allowed to measure. The whole Easter of the Magen Avram was because we're not measuring during the week anyway. But you're saying if I am at home, let's say. Whoever the balabas, they're very careful to measure. Everything is more scientific, not eyeballing it. So you'll be allowed to do it, Taka. However, I saw on my Aruch HaShulchan, the publisher put over there wherever the Mishnah Brura disagree with him. So he writes over there. There's a difference between the Shulchan Aruch, the Mishnah Brura, the Mishnah Brura mashma. It has to do with minhag, not you individually. And that's mashma, he says also, the Alter Rebbe says, I looked in, it's lav davke, I don't want to make a new machloikes, so it doesn't make a difference. If you, b'derech klal, measure, that's what the Rosh of the Aruch HaShulchan, then you can measure it. And that's what they meant, b'mokem. It doesn't mean a difference in if it's minhag hamokem and how I do it. You could do either way. If you b'derech klal measuring, for you, it's allowed on Yom Tov. The whole thing is to begin with, it's Isur the Rabbanon, Shavah the Rabbanon. It doesn't say in Torah anywhere not to measure. Chum said, looks like you're doing business, you're buying and selling. So since where is a mega mokem to measure, where you measure it, I don't think we could make a machal between those poskim and l'gaba this inyan. Either way, there's a kula to measure. If there is a minhag mokem to measure, or you measure, there's a kula to measure. Yes. The only thing I want to add over here, the Maisa, which is very, very practical, l'gabe measuring of mitzvah. So I saw in Kafachayim, he brings over there, if you need to measure the matzahs, the morer, all the things you've taken Pesach with the shiurim, do it before Yom Tov. L'choira, you don't have to do it before. You could do it on Yom Tov. Again, we're talking about measuring
with
done
a ruler?
Without a digital.
With the ruler?
Usually it's weight, because then you have to, otherwise you could do the ruler, but then you have to take out the air. So usually, like the Kafacham himself brought, today it's a lot easier. The measuring, originally it was volume. Today we'll do by weight. So let's say you have a mechanical weight, it's not digital. You should be allowed to do it even on Yom Tov. So here is the halacha in Shulchan Aruch Hilchos Shabbos in Siman Shin Vav. It says over here, Mutar at Shin Vav halacha zayin. Mutar limdod b'Shabbos, and you could take Kal V'chomer to Yom Tov. Medida shel mitzvah. If there's a medida shel mitzvah, stop measuring on Shabbos Yom Tov, you wouldn't be allowed. But that's medida shel mitzvah, you would be allowed to. Kagon limdod imesh b'mikvah arboim se'ah. You want to measure over there, by mikveh, you don't go by weight. You cannot, that's going to be too heavy to put the water and weight. Over there, you do by volume. You're going to take the sizes. Amma brum shalosh amos, I think, the measure of mikveh. You're allowed to measure the water over there. V'limdod ezer mishu chala vilchas k'mosh. Anything medida shel mitzvah you would be allowed to do. So according to this, l'choira, what Kaf says you have to measure before Yom Tov. No, l'choira, I could do it on Yom Tov. Oh, so the only thing where I see maybe what the Kaf what he said, there's a Tosfos in Maseches Beya. The Tosfos says over there, v'chen bepesach nomi yesh liyizor melimdat b'Yom Tov l'matzos. Possibly the some understood when the Tosfos says over there, it's Daf Chavtes Amud Beis. V'chen nami yesh liyizor b'Yom Tov l'matzos. Possibly they understood measuring the matzahs. No, it's clear of this. Whoever look at the Tosfos, the whole Tosfos over there, you see, talk about giving challah. Because the challah on Pesach, we don't give from the dough, we don't make a big dough, it shouldn't become chometz, we do it smaller batches. So how you give challah? You give challah from the matzahs. You put all the matzahs after they bake together and give challah. So it says over there, the Tosfos says, v'chen lematzahs, he says, yishem melimdat b'yom tov, do it before Yom Tov, or b'yom tov give be'oimed, do it because the time Beis Hamikdash we used to give it to the Kohanim, you will know the Shiur. Now we're anyway not giving the challah to the Kohen, we're burning it. So you could give v'oimed. You don't need to know exactly the Torah is about challah, giving from the matzah challah. But limited a matzah itself, it's allowed to. There's another Alter Rebbe he brings later on.
Why should it be different?
I'm sorry?
Why should challah be different? It's also a mitzvah.
No, because when you give the Kohen exactly the shiur challah, we're not giving it to the Kohen anyway. We're burning it. So if you do less, more, b'chol shu yoytza mid'arais. That's why you don't do measurement on Yom Tov l'gabei challah. But there's another Alter Rebbe. It's a shin yud. I think shin yud zayin. Anyway, he brings up the Alter Rebbe, the Medida Shel Mitzvah is Mamash Mitzvah itself, directly, he says. Well, you could argue what's direct mitzvah, it's not, but definitely if somebody, like I said, he doesn't want to take more than he needs, more or matzah, he wants to take the minimum. He can't, something with the wine, I talked about before Yom Tov, we have shiurim about this. Some people, they're not easy for them to take whether the alcohol or the sugar, they want to take the minimum. So that's a Medida Shel Mitzvah, you want to do the mitzvah. So you're allowed to do it on Yom Tov even. The Medida Shel Mitzvah, again, boifan amuta, nothing digital I'm talking about, I said, mechanical. So you should be allowed on Yom Tov, on any Yom Tov, to do Medida, and also the Mishnah Berurah brings something says l'refuah. L'refuah is a mitzvah. If somebody needs to have some kind of Medida for his refuah, to take somebody, that's how I came to this halach. Somebody asked me on Yom Tov, he says you have to measure, he has a powder of medicine that he have to take, he doesn't want to take, so he needs to measure it. So it says it's mutar. Refuah saguf is a mitzvah. So anything that's mitzvah, you're allowed to measure. Otherwise, if it's not dvar mitzvah or chilas Yom Tov, according to the, and you b'derech klal measure, you're allowed to measure on Yom Tov. If you b'derech klal don't measure, you eyeball, so you're not allowed to measure. But whatever is dvar mitzvah, you allowed to measure on Shabbos b'Yom Tov. And if you eyeball when you do your food, you don't measure exactly how much you put. So on Yom Tov also, the Psak of Magen Avram, everybody masking with that. You don't measure Yom Tov for the spices for your food because normally you don't measure. So that's no heter to measure on Yom Tov. Okay, shkoyach a good moyed.